Michael Delecky.
Here.
Patrice Steiner. Stephen Becker.
Here.
Barbara Doss.
Here.
Eileen Nichols.
She's here somewhere.
She's here in the building.
And Dick Bonin.
There she is.
There.
Here. It'll be a festive night. Next on the agenda is consideration of the consent calendar. The following items may be approved on a single motion and vote due to their routine nature or previous discussion. Please indicate if you prefer separate discussion and action. A is the minutes of the November 27th council meeting. B is payment of bills. C, the financial statement for November. D is appointments of boards and commissions. None tonight. If you'd like to serve on a city board or commission, please come to City Hall and fill out an application. E is licenses, 1 and or 2 year operators, licenses for premises, license to traffic in fermented malt beverages and intoxicating liquors, 2 taxi drivers and 3 taxi vehicles. Is there any item on which you would prefer separate discussion and action?
Move to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second. The motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next is comments, observations, and petitions, if any, and no one has asked to speak tonight. Moving on then to reports. Committee reports. Parks, Forestry, and Recreation. Killian.
I have no additions to the minutes.
Plan Commission, Delecky and Becker.
Nothing to add.
I don't have anything either. Other reports. Airport financial statement for November. The water and sewer revenue and expense report for November. The city attorney itemized statement for November, and department progress reports. Is there any item there on which you have questions or would like to make comment?
I do have a question on the city attorney's report. Brian is, he's not here. Perhaps Larry, you can answer this. The Kallenbach rental code litigation. Just a second, I gotta move my.
Yep, there has been some movement on that.
Dismissal of Chapter 13 bankruptcy.
Yep. To file Chapter 13 bankruptcy, Mr. Kallenbach needed to file paperwork that included a payment plan as to how he would repay the debts that he had. If you know the difference between 7 and 13, Chapter 13 is a restructuring of your debts in a way to develop a payment plan. Chapter 7 is wiping the slate clean and starting over. And Mr. Kallenbach never did submit a payment schedule, and he never did make the first payment on the payment schedule, both of which needed to be done before it went to the judge. When it got to the judge, he did not show up for the hearing. The judge appointed a trustee, and the trustee filed to dismiss. The city filed to create an involuntary bankruptcy. We decided we wanted to force him into bankruptcy to liquidate the assets, force him into a Chapter 7, and that was not considered. So we're back to square one. We're going to start with a sheriff's auction on January 15th, where every one of his properties will be up for sale individually.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
And could we be going through this again? He declare bankruptcy again?
Yes, we could.
Okay.
And at that point, we anticipate that the judge would be rather irritated and would be more willing to force a bankruptcy at that point.
Is it the same judge, Flanagan?
No, this is a federal judge for a bankruptcy court. I'm not sure of the location of the court, but I will tell you, I believe it's the same bankruptcy judge from one episode to the next.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on to action items tonight. Item A is Resolution 12-37, establishing the fee to be charged for Section 4.07 Sidewalk Cafe permits. Is your little staff presentation?
Okay, the ordinance that was adopted previously that created the permit process or the ability to allow restaurants to operate a sidewalk cafe permit or a sidewalk cafe made reference to an annual permit fee to basically help cover some of the costs of the city would incur in going through the approval process. This ordinance or this resolution would establish the amount of that fee. I did a little research on other communities that I could find that had sidewalk cafe permit fee, and basically the range was from no charge to $250 for a permit. To me, it didn't make sense personally to have the same permit charge or the fee annually, because most of the work is gonna be done the first time they come in for the approval. If it's just a renewal, there really isn't any changes. It didn't make sense to charge the same amount for the follow-up renewal fees. The suggestion that we put forth, it seemed to be kind of a common a number, was the initial fee of $100 and then an annual permit fee if there are no changes of $25. So that's a suggestion. If the council's got any other ideas, we just have to change that number. Any questions?
Any comments or discussion? Jack Lidkey and Heidi Dias-Beth have both asked to speak on this issue, so you please come forward to the microphone, state your name and local address, and tell us what you think.
My name is Jack Lidkey. I'm the Executive Director for the Platteville Main Street program at 20 South 4th Street. I've been asked by the Executive Committee of the Downtown Main Street program to voice our objection to the fee structure. I liked, in fact, Joe's first point that some communities charge no fees for this. It is the feeling of our board that the ambiance created by the first time exercise of sidewalk cafes in Platteville should not be burdened by a fee structure of any type. And we have no objection to the ordinance. We feel that the cafes, the sidewalk cafes, would be regulated and should be regulated by an ordinance. It's just simply not in our purview that we feel that you should be charging a fee, either an initial fee of $100 or the renewal fee of $25. It just seems like an additional burden on those people willing to invest in outside furniture and so on to make this happen. So, any questions?
Who should pay for it, Jack?
Pay for what?
The regulation. I mean, there are costs that accrue to the city for doing this. Should the general taxpayer be responsible for that and not the people whose businesses are creating the regulation issues?
Well, the city was the instigator of the ordinance to regulate them. Mm-hmm. So I would see this as a situation that you're probably not going to have more than 4 or 5 of these possible requests for permits to do this. So to me, it doesn't warrant the fee, and our board felt the same way, that it doesn't warrant a fee to review an application, which is basically what the city would be doing. You could review 5 applications in 10 minutes time. So the fee is simply an additional burden on this. Now, if it grows beyond that and the city could demonstrate that there is an actual real burden on administrative time, I think that may be a point at which to bring it back up as a fee thing. But I think the overall emphasis on the city, and I understand it, and our board does too, for making all types of programs be supported by fees. I think you have to look at the overall longer picture of what is the community really saying in terms of welcoming people into the community and creating the ambiance within our community if we're going to charge a fee, and in this case, say, generate a new fee for basically a 5-minute review of an application. You're either going to up or down on an application, and it won't take very long to take a look at it. It's not generating a lot of money either for the city. I understand that.
If we don't have a fee, does this mean everybody and anybody's going to be throwing whatever they want out in front of their stores on Main Street because there's no restriction at all?
Well, you have the ordinance to govern that.
Or will a fee limit this to the people who are serious about doing a sidewalk cafe instead of just anybody and anything going out there on the sidewalk, and now we've got all kinds of obstructions?
No, I don't think the fee you're charging would stop anybody from looking at the possibility of doing that. I think the fee is an annoyance, and it's a slap at the business people who are willing to do that. And you've got a wide variety of people who can take advantage of it and I'll let her speak for herself at Driftless Market, but they've got 3 little tables on the street which simply people decide to sit out there on a nice day as opposed to sitting inside. as opposed to maybe what could be done on Second Street with a larger sidewalk cafe, and you have other issues there. And I think the ordinance is well written. I think it's a good thing. It's more our board is objecting to the fee structure for that. And if you run into other issues, at that time, I think the council could consider what necessary fees need to be applied to enforce that ordinance, if that's the case. But simply just to administer, to take a look at an application, it seems exorbitant. So.
Heidi?
Hi, I'm Heidi Dias McBeth, 1723 Rex Road, and I'm just making a statement on behalf of the owners of the Driftless Market at 95 West Main Street. We are opposed to the council imposing a sidewalk cafe fee for downtown businesses interested in putting a few small tables up outside of their business. We don't even have 3, we have 2 tables that we set up outside. The use of outdoor seating is intended to enhance the look and feel of the downtown area and presents a friendly appearance, encouraging people to take time to shop and spend time on Main Street. Businesses that choose to make the effort to do this are maintaining the cleanliness of the sidewalks and improving the overall appearance in front of their businesses. We feel this should be encouraged by the city and not discouraged by imposing a fee that creates a financial burden. So it's not something that generates like a lot of extra seating business for us by being able to place seats outside. So anyway, that was all I had on that. And then I do have an additional comment that goes to the permit parking. Do you want me to make that now, or
wait till that.
you'll do that later? Okay. Anything else? Any questions?
Thank you. Council discussion.
I have a question for Joe. Joe, what do you see as the city's work as far as the sidewalk cafe?
Well, we would have to obviously review the application materials. The request goes to the Plan Commission, so they would have to, there would be staff time in preparing the information for the Plan Commission agenda, attending the meetings. So like I mentioned before, there's a requirement for insurance. So it'd basically just be, the intent would be to cover, it's like any zoning application, conditional use permit, rezoning, whatever the case may be, there's staff time involved in processing that request. So I guess I would view this as the same type of situation to at least help cover some of those costs. Now, that's why I do think, you know, the initial work would be the first time through annually. That would be just a matter of if there's no changes, it's just, you know, making sure the insurance is still in place and there's no issues that came up from the last year to see if there's anything that needs to be addressed. That one should be pretty minor, which is why I suggest a smaller amount.
You haven't gone through this yet, but what do you see as the time needed to do this? We got into that some with the rental license and how much time it took to do rental licenses and
Right, well,
an idea?
as you mentioned, I haven't gone through it yet, so anything I would come up with would be a guess at this point.
But you got a variety as far as some cities charge nothing.
Right, like I said, the ones I saw were anywhere from no charge to $250, so.
Do you know what cities, what size cities that had no charge, Joe? Small, large, huge?
I don't know if I can say for sure that there was a direct correlation.
The first time it's going to go through the planning commission. After that, when it's a renewal, it'll be just a process of filing the form and signing off.
Correct.
We dropped to $50 first time and no renewal.
Yeah, I was gonna say no renewal. Yeah, I'd agree to that. I guess my concern about having some sort of fee is perhaps there could end up being, for example, on Second Street, I know this probably wouldn't happen at the Driftless Market, but there could end up being garbage and debris from people at the sidewalk cafes, because there certainly is right now without the cafes. And I believe it's the business owners who are supposed to clean that up, but I don't think that's what happens.
I'm not sure though, the charging a fee for this permit would change that, if that's going to be a problem. I would think that that would be more a question than of enforcement, and I honestly don't know. Does the ordinance address that kind of enforcement?
Well,
There's
I
gotta be-
think
Yeah, it
that's
does.
part of the
It
reason
does.
there's the renewal, is if there's a continuing problem, they might not get renewed.
I would personally prefer no fee or $25 for the initial fee and then no fee after that. If, as Jack said, if suddenly we have just a lot of cafes that want to open and it really starts taking a lot of administration time, then I think, fine, we can institute a fee then, we can increase the fee at any time we care to, but if you look at the restaurants that, like Driftless, that are currently using it, as she said, it's not a moneymaker for them necessarily. It's not that they're having enough tables out there to really warrant saying that they're having that many more people. It's just if it's a nice day, you might choose to take your cup of soup and coffee or whatever and sit outside rather than inside. So it adds to the ambiance of the downtown. It's very attractive to see that. I don't really think we need an administration fee.
I'll make a motion to have an annual fee of $25 every year,
And no renewal?
every year, including the initial year and the second year and
Oh,
the third
every
year
year.
and every year thereafter.
All right.
$25 a year.
So that's the initial permit fee and everything.
Motion dies.
I have a question. Can somebody tell me, earlier this year, I think we established a fee for a street vendor. Did we do that?
Mm-hmm.
On, like, Second Street vendors that are selling food on Second Street?
Yes, we do.
Did we establish a fee or
I don't.
We did. It's a license.
Yeah, it's a license to sell.
a license or something?
Yeah, I don't know if there was a fee with that or not. Do you recall?
I think there was.
Sorry, there is a fee, but it's waived for some nonprofits.
And what is the fee?
I'm trying to recall off the top of my head.
Jan's looking in the code book over there. I think there was one.
Because I personally believe that there's a lot of similarity here.
Either increase the one or reduce the
And,
other.
and if we aren't charging for street vendors, we certainly shouldn't charge for ongoing businesses.
But I thought that we did charge for street vendors.
I
to get
just,
a license.
I just don't know if we, I
Almost
can't
certainly do.
remember what the fee was. I know that we regulated it.
The annual fee is $50.
And that's an annual fee for a street vendor.
Yeah, but that's more or less the street vendor, is somebody that they can move around all over town, right? Or they gotta stay at a certain address. Where, with, outdoor cafes, we're talking each individual that's right in front of their own place of business. Where the vendors are moving around.
I'll make a motion, we establish a $25 permit fee with no annual, for the initial permit, with no fee after that.
Second.
Your motion and a second discussion. I think it should be same as the street vendors.
I don't know.
Anybody else? Roll call vote, please.
Killian,
Yes.
Delecky,
No.
Steiner,
Yes.
Becker,
Nope.
Doss,
Yes.
Resolution?
Nichols,
Yes.
Bonin.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Now, do we need to redo this and pass the resolution with that number in, or does that count?
The motion was simply to set the fee in the resolution.
We didn't have a motion for the resolution, so we should have had that first and then amend the resolution.
All right, why don't
Technically.
you try again, Steve? Why don't you reload?
Steve, it was Barb.
Did Steve make the motion?
No, Barb.
No,
All right.
voted against it.
All right, I'm sorry.
I make a motion, I don't want to adopt this resolution, so I'm not going to make a motion to adopt this resolution. We
What
can't
about-
make a motion to amend a
Motion to adopt the resolution as amended. If you assume the
Okay.
previous.
motion to adopt the resolution as amended, which means there will be an initial permit fee for a sidewalk cafe of $25. That's it.
Second.
The motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, well, roll call vote again.
Killian,
Yes.
Delecky,
No.
Steiner,
Yes.
Becker,
Yes?
Doss,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Bonin,
Yes,
motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Item B is Resolution 12-38, authorizing the salaries and rates of pay of the officers and permanent employees excluding union and library personnel for the year 2013.
The city council included during their public hearing for the 2013 budget additional funding to provide 1% salary increase to non-union employees at the amount of $33,000. Once that motion adds funding to the budget, we now have to approve the actual increase of compensation. So at your last meeting, you added the money to the budget. Now you have to actually issue the increase. This resolution is an annual, well, when we do increase salaries, we use a resolution, and this is the same format you've seen before. It does include additional positions that previously was not on the list due to the fact that Act 10 changed some of our union environment. We now have additional employees that are non-union. So the resolution got longer.
Motion to adopt resolution 1238.
I got a comment.
Motion to adopt resolution 1238.
Second.
The motion and a second. Discussion.
What about,
Wait, let Patrice go first.
Oh, why are we excluding library personnel? Oh.
Library personnel have their compensation established by the library board.
we just give them money?
The library board handles that.
Is the dollar amount for the people on this list $33,000?
At the time, the motion for the budget was to include all positions. This resolution does not include the library personnel or the city manager. Your city manager is under an employment contract, and the library personnel are governed by the library board of directors. So it does, the budgeted item is larger than what is included in this resolution.
So it's not, so what is it?
So what is the total of the resolution?
What is the increase in salary for the people on the list, the total dollar amount?
30.
I'm sorry, Dwayne, I don't know if I have that. Do you have?
I don't have that either, because it's all included. The motion last week, or 2 weeks ago, was for all the non-union employees. That amount was
3,000, but that-
$33,532.
Eileen was talking about that.
Yeah, that's what it was. I'm asking, is it $33,500? Is it more than that? Is it less than that? That's all I'm asking.
It'd be a little less because we have to deduct out the city manager and the library employees in this resolution here, because they're not included, and they're included in the 1%.
So is it less than 33,500?
On the resolution itself for these employees, yes.
I seem to remember the discussion last time about giving a 1% raise to the employees that had been cut to 37 hours. And I didn't remember the discussion being everyone, and somehow this snuck through, and it's to everyone, and I don't recall that being the intent at the time. It was your intent, really. Ken and
what I
remember
remember,
that
too.
differently.
Who made the motion? Was it?
I made the motion and that was my intent, yes.
But
The
Or
motion,
all-
The motion was for all non-union, which obviously is more than 37-hour-a-week personnel.
I have a question, and I've talked to Eileen about this. Who are the non-union? Do we have any unions left as far as the street department and the water and sewer? And dispatchers?
not as far as those two departments. The last remaining union is the WPPA union, Wisconsin Professional Police Officers,
Okay.
and that would be your sergeants and your officers within the police department.
So those unions chose not to.
Excuse me, not the sergeants.
Opposite.
They chose not to become recertified.
The other entities chose not to recertify, to my knowledge.
Okay. So that's the status.
Yes. And the police officers are already getting a 2% raise, which is why I said all non-union.
And they also received a raise last year, is that correct?
That's correct.
So the union, the one union set of employees that we have left, no one that was non-union last year got a raise, and some people were cut to 37 hours.
Correct.
And this year, again, the folks in the union will get the 2% raise, and the motion was to give 1% to the rest of the employees.
Correct.
And that's what I second.
Well, we had a little switcheroo then, because I remember this all being the argument about the employees that were cut to 37 hours, and that this is all about making sure they at least got something, and somehow I missed that. And I gotta say, I'm just a little disappointed here. We were in a fiscal crisis, and we're just bumping along here like there's nothing wrong. And once you put this money in here, it'll be in there forever, and we'll be paying it next year and the year after, and it's only gonna get harder. And I don't know what the issue is that we can't see the problems that we face, but there seems to be a lot of ignoring going on.
From what I know about the tax bill, Mike, you'll pay $7 more this year than you did a year ago. I don't think that that is exorbitant.
Now, I understand, Eileen, that's your argument. A little bit here, a little bit there. It never hurts all that much. But when you make that argument, you are doing the ignoring, which is we are facing a huge fiscal problem. We're having our own fiscal cliff coming up here, which is we're not going to have enough money to continue doing the capital improvements that we need to do. And anybody who's examined the budget knows this, and yet we keep bumbling along here like it's all going to get better. And I can't understand why anybody thinks it's going to. No one's been able to explain how we're going to have so much more tax revenue coming in without raising taxes, that this is all going to get fixed. And so we just keep spending away. Spend, spend, spend. Ken?
Well, as I look at this, what bothers me is that we go through this list and we are adding a director of administration, $75,750. We're adding a finance director at $50,500. And I realize that a portion of the salary of these people, I believe, is going to water and sewer, but that's just a kind of a switch game, because the taxpayers are still winding up having to pay for their salary. So that if we can justify going and adding a director of administration and a finance director and increasing the number of staff at City Hall, I believe we can justify a 1% raise for the people that are at the lower level.
But the point is, we're giving a 1% raise to all the other people too.
That's right.
Well, I have a question. Why are we giving a 1% raise to the director of administration before the director of administration's even hired? And why are we giving the same thing with the finance director? I think this salary is for the new finance director that we're out advertising trying to get, right?
That's correct.
So we're giving a raise to the finance director that we haven't even hired yet, and the director of administration that we haven't even hired yet. Doesn't make sense.
We constructed the resolution based on the motion.
Well, I can't believe
Well-
the intent of the motion was to give a raise to somebody that isn't even here.
We can change that.
Jeez.
Steve, I would have to agree. I've never heard of giving giving a raise to someone who isn't even hired.
Yeah, I really question that. I said all non-union employees. If the person isn't even an employee, when I made the motion, I don't understand how you give a 1% raise.
The easiest thing to do would be to simply suggest that those positions you do not wish to get the raise be removed from the resolution.
Other discussion?
I would remove them completely. I don't agree with the addition of these positions, period. That
I'm
solves
not
the problem.
sure that this is the place you can do that. I think it's just a
Well-
paid resolution, not a position resolution.
Well,
I understand your sentiments, but I'm not sure you can do that here.
we don't fund the position, and the position doesn't occur.
No, there's,
Take
there-
away the
my,
money,
my
there's no
understanding
position.
is there's funding in the budget for a finance director.
That's correct.
All right, I move to amend the motion and withdraw the finance director's raise from this, in that person isn't even hired. We aren't gonna give a raise to someone who's not hired. I'll go this one first.
I'd second that.
A motion is second to remove the raise from the finance director, correct?
Yeah, because there is not one.
Discussion?
Are you gonna bring in the second motion?
Assume she would do it after this one.
Not before we.
Well, my question is, are you gonna bring in the second motion? Yes?
Yes, she is.
She's doing it one at a time so we
One
can
at a
pay
time.
especially
We could've
close
combined
attention
them.
and not get confused. Other discussion about that?
Well, what is Dwayne Borgen's title?
At this point, Mr. Borgen is the finance director.
The finance director.
He has been offered the position of the director of administration, and he has accepted the position.
Okay,
The position is not funded until 2013. Therefore, he cannot fill that position until 2013.
okay. So it's just the finance director then?
Right now.
That's
Yeah.
3 weeks from now, isn't it?
So this would actually just remove then the finance director's salary would be $50,000 at the most.
Yep.
Any other discussion? So the motion is to remove the 1% from the the director of administration position. Did you say finance?
The finance director.
See,
Finance.
it's a good thing you did it one at a time,
Director.
kept it straight. Finance director position. Roll call vote, please.
Killian,
Yes.
Delecky,
Yes.
Steiner,
Yes.
Becker,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Bonin.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Do you have another motion?
My question is, when the current finance director was offered the position of director of administration, was a salary set at that time for that position?
Yes, it was.
And was it more than the current salary?
It was set at the salary dictated by the budget, 75,000.
It's more than the current salary. Okay. I make a motion that we withdraw the director of administration the 1% raise on a position that is just being filled but has not been active, I guess.
Oh, second.
The
You know,
motion is-
Larry, I really have to
motion-
ask.
The motion is second.
Yeah,
Do we have any
never mind.
discussion?
I have to say that I distinctly remember that when we had a new hire, there was like a 6-month time frame where it was like a probationary period and no raises were given. Now, maybe there's something that I've missed in the employee handbook now, but I am surprised that we have to do this. But I did second the motion.
Discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Killian,
Yes.
Delecky,
Yes.
Steiner,
Yes.
Becker,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Bonin.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now we're back to the original resolution.
I'm ready to call the question.
Okay, we did have a motion on that, right, Jan?
I made the motion that we adopt that resolution, and now we've withdrawn 2 positions.
Anything else? Roll call vote, please.
Did I have a second?
Yeah, Eileen seconded.
Eileen, okay, I'm
That was
sorry.
before, that was
the
before
original.
whole thing.
Oh, I'm
Yes, I
sorry. yeah.
seconded the motion, the original motion, and we're going to vote on the original motion, which is the resolution now with the 2 amendments that we've approved.
Killian,
Yes.
Delecky,
No.
Steiner,
Yes.
Becker,
No.
Doss,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Bonin.
I don't really know what we're voting on here. I'm gonna have to say no.
Motion carries.
Okay. All right, item C under action tonight is 2013 to 2015 city assessor contract. Is there a staff discussion or analysis?
Since our last meeting, the only change I have to the staff note was that I did contact the references supplied by the company. I contacted the city of Beaver Dam, Brillion, Mosinee, Milton, Portage, and Stoughton. And all 6 communities had nothing but positive things to say. Can be anticipated when you have references, but specifically, some of the comments were good job of scheduling with property owners, has an 800 number, real good at answering questions and emails, a good source. worked with the city for 5 years. One has 10 years. Another one said many, another one said 10. Many of the communities were eager to renew their contract and continue. Good at solving disputes quickly. Very positive overall. I guess there were a lot of positive comments made by the references. And I did ask, there's a representative from the company, Jim Danielson, present to answer any questions you may have about the assessor's contract. If anyone has questions, I can ask Jim to approach the mic.
I have a question based on the information provided. On the reference list, there were 3 different, I don't know if they were levels or what. There was job type, maintenance versus revaluation versus full value something. I can't hardly read it.
Full value maintenance.
Maintenance, I
Yep.
guess.
You're looking at their
Full value
current
maintenance,
clients.
revaluation, and maintenance. And I'm interested in knowing what what job type we have.
The job type that we bid was a regular maintenance. A full value maintenance refers to annual revaluations to maintain 100%. The RFP that we responded to was regular maintenance for 3 years.
Okay, and so then after the end of 3 years, the need would be then to conduct a full revaluation? If you have, I mean, don't you have to stay within a certain percentage of 100%?
Correct, yeah. Once you fall out of compliance, which is 10% of 100 either way, you have a certain amount of years statutorily to get everything back to 100%. Most municipalities statewide are under the maintenance program with a revaluation maybe every 6 to 8 years. The full value maintenance is a good program in that it ensures equitability through classes and for taxpayers. It might be something to consider, you know, in the future after you do your next revaluation. Right now you're between revaluations. The maintenance cycle is pretty standard until you do the next revaluation. Cities need to be a certain size, and I think you guys are, to maintain full value assessments, but that would be something to think about after your next revaluation.
Larry, could you tell me when the last time was we had a full revaluation?
It's been a few years. I can tell you that our evaluation percentage is, it needs to be around 100%, or it can't fall 10% away from that.
I know it.
And as a municipality, I believe we're right over 100%.
I believe the RFP said 2009 was the last revaluation.
Okay.
And you said it needs to be done generally every
6 to 8 years.
That's pretty typical, every 6 to 8 years. We are in a downturn in the market, obviously, so you're probably a little over 100%. People are sticking closer to 100%, so the need for revaluation gets pushed out a little further, but 6 to 8 years is typical.
Other questions?
I have a question. I mean, I want to answer this. What are you doing or not doing that you can offer a contract that is less than half of the next bidder?
Well, I guess I wish I would have known that prior to putting in the number. That would have made it easier for me, but.
I'm guessing the next one you go is going to go up a little bit, maybe?
I won't answer that. Truthfully, we do 95 municipalities statewide, and we try to slot them based on the type of municipality it is, how many improvements you have, the size, how much growth you've seen over time, where you are in the revaluation cycle, the difficulty of the assessment within the municipality, like with lakes and different, you know, things like that. To me, I was surprised when I did see the numbers. I realized that we're in a transition time statewide that everything needs to be digital. So what we did was say, how much would we normally get for a municipality this size? And we do enough of them to know that we do maintenance for about $10,000 a year. We then thought it would be 35 to 40 days to get everything digital. So 35 to 40 days, we figured about 300 hours, and that to me was going to be a cost of about 15,000. So what I did was prorate the 15,000 over a 3-year span, which would be about 5,000 a year. So it essentially came up to about 15,000 a year. You know, I was surprised to see that, but at that point in time,
Thank you.
that's what it was.
You said that the records will be made digital. At the end of this contract, when we rebid another contract, who do the records belong to?
The records are the city's records. The data is always owned by the city. We're the custodian of those records. So we have to, by statute, have everything digital by the end of board review 2013, pictures and sketches 2015. Our plan is to get them done prior to 2015, but the data itself will be digital by this year's board review, and it'll be on our website by that time.
And so then if I want to look up my own or my neighbor's, I'll be able to do it by accessing a website that's...
Correct.
I go to the City of Platteville website and then get directed to your website or something.
Yeah, we'll probably put a link on your website. Our website's accurateassessor.com. You can search by street, you can search by parcel, you can search by number. It's pretty easy. All the data will be on there. Taxpayers can also schedule appointments online. So they want to come into the open book, they can make an appointment right on our website. We try to make it pretty easy for them.
Other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Anything else?
Nope. I would move to, I move to approve the 2013 to 2015 assessor's contract and award it to Accurate Appraisal.
Second.
The motion is second. That's for the total of 44,700. Okay, any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Killian,
Yes.
Delecky,
Yes.
Steiner,
Yes.
Becker,
Yes.
Dawes,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Bonin,
Yes.
motion carries.
Item D. Excuse me?
Council President, I believe that, my understanding is that there was $33,000 included in the budget for next year for this contract. So now it appears that we'll have at least $15,000 extra dollars in next year's budget. Is that correct?
Assuming everything goes smoothly.
You want to spend it?
No.
Oh, it sure looked
I
to me like
just-
she was getting ready to.
I'm just pointing out that maybe the expenditure that we made earlier has actually been covered.
If it didn't make sense earlier, it doesn't make sense if you cover it later. It still doesn't make sense. The fact that you got lucky doesn't make it sensible. All right, moving on to item D, contract with Economic Development Partners LLC to assist with the library block redevelopment project. We have a brief staff comment.
We've reviewed this at our last meeting. Unfortunately, we did have a couple of changes. It went to the library board meeting, and the library board did approve it, but they made a couple of changes, and I'll go through those real quickly. The council members should have the new contract loose in front of you. It would have been a handout this evening. The first change is on page 1, paragraph number 2 under consideration. The areas in bold type were added. When the library board reviewed the proposal, it had originally said that it would be $50,000 and travel and incidentals would be in addition to that. And the library board said, well, we want to cap that at $1,000 so that we know exactly what we're spending. So that is reflected within that paragraph changes. The second change is under the appendix A, paragraph H. Paragraph H was added. In the document, as I understand it, the library board was concerned that the next phase or the next grant writing opportunity with the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation was not specifically mentioned within the document. So they wanted to make sure paragraph H was added to ensure that under this contract, Economic Development Partners were required to file the next grant application. The paragraph is worded a little bit long, and I know Nichols, Councilmember Nichols maybe has some changes, but the last thing that was added was the signature lines. The original contract had the city of Platteville signing off. and I added the lines for the library board. I felt that this was something that they needed to carry, and they should also be accompanied, also be signing the document, the contract. So those are the 3 changes that have been made since it was in your packet.
I will comment on the Appendix A, the scope of services, under H. The way it is worded, it is a little confusing. Excuse me. So I would submit that it should be changed to say simply, write and submit the CDBG Public Facilities Grant, period. The, with the contract not to exceed 51,000, and that includes the 1,000 maximum for travel and incidental expenses. That language was added on page 1, so it's not necessary to repeat it, and it may actually lead to some confusion. It may be read that the public facilities grant is not to exceed 51,000, so.
So you want to have period after grant?
Period after grant, so
strike the
very
rest of
simply
it.
read, write and submit the CDBG Public Facilities Grant, period. Because the other issue is covered on page 1. So I would move to approve the Economic Development Partners LLC consultant agreement letter of engagement as presented with the changes.
Second.
The motion and a second, discussion.
I had one question.
I have some questions also.
Well, Patrice first.
Who's going to be responsible for paying the travel expenses and incidentals not to exceed $1,000?
Those fees will all come from the library. They have a fund for building, and this is a feasibility study on their next building. So they've agreed to cover this match for the grant. Out of the $51,000, we received $25,000 grant from the state of Wisconsin, and the library board is covering the rest.
Ken?
Okay, I have a few things. First one I have is, what are the parameters or limits to this feasibility study? I'm talking about in particular as far as the library, excuse me, itself. Is the plan to tear down the library and to rebuild? Is that going to be part of it?
What we're discussing with what the study is going to take a look at is whether or not it's necessary to add on to the library or expand the space. It is a feasibility study to help determine the library's involvement in the block's redevelopment project. So to answer your question, I believe the answer is yes. Everything is being looked at when it comes to the library services and the expansion of those services.
So there's a possibility that the library would be torn down.
That's a possibility, but it's nothing in stone. I mean, it hasn't even really been discussed yet.
Well, my concern is I'm not particularly in favor of tearing down the building. I think an addition would be fine to the building because right across the street, across the block is Roundtree Hall, and Roundtree Hall was built in different parts, and you don't know that as far as looking at the building. And if we tear it down, then who's going to pay for the building up? To me, that's going to be quite a bit of cost. And the city, I don't think, can stand much more increased debt. We're having difficulty now meeting our obligations. So I think there should be parameters here as far as what's going to be done with this, with the library itself.
We haven't had the discussions as to whether it'd be torn down or not because we haven't seen the feasibility study results as to what is the market need.
We have to do something with the EMS building. We have to do something with the fire station. And if we start talking about doing raising funds, I think we're going to be hitting a limit shortly as far as how much funds will be raised for different projects if the library is included. So I don't think we can depend on fundraising as far as meeting the financial needs for redeveloping this block, and if we have to redo the library completely. Another thing that concerns me about this particular agreement is that there's no resume given on work done by this particular consultant. I've worked on a lot of different projects, committees, and I like to look at what people have done in the way of work. For example, when I was on the library board, I went to see other libraries. Other projects, I go see the projects, or I call up people that I know in those cities, places, and I have nothing here to go on as far as the ability, the experience, the expertise of the particular consultant. So that bothers me. I don't think it would be prudent, in my part, I believe, to vote for this project without knowing more about the experience. Also, another thing that bothers me about this project is the contract. The contract says $25,000 at the beginning. I would change that around. I would say $5,000 at the signing, and then $10,000, the first draft is submitted. And then number 3, $15,000 when the second draft is submitted revised. And the council reviews that, and then $10,000 when the final draft is submitted. And then the public should be able to review it, and we get the final copy. So I don't particularly like that sequence of payment. Another thing I didn't like about the contract is termination. It says under termination that, if I can find it in this new document, termination is with or without cause.
Second page.
Second page. And
There.
right here, termination. Either party may terminate the agreement, disagreement, or any renewal thereof with or without cause upon 30 days' notice to the other party. That bothers me. To me, if the city terminates, I would say that the consultant retains the payments to date. If the consultant terminates, I think the consultant should be returning the payments if they are making termination without cause. So those are things that bother me about this particular contract. Thank you.
Other discussion?
This is our second contract with this particular EDP, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I believe in our first go-round, that we were provided with the background information of this group.
So we were
I can't go back in my, can't remember exactly when it was. I have all that on my computer. I just can't remember.
You're talking about the $3,500?
But I'm pretty certain, was that a $2,500?
$3,500.
It was 3,500 for that, so I
don't remember.
don't think we had this. If I could give a little background, it might help. When I first came on board, this was presented by a few members of our board to do this planning grant. And at that time, it was cautioned that it should probably have gone out to bid because the first amount was $35,000. I know Mr. Berkey did have somebody else submit a bid, and it went forth with your approval for $3,500. In that particular planning grant, Cindy Yagi had indicated that the next phase, this feasibility study phase, would also be awarded to EDP. It's your call. It can go out to bid. We know her numbers now, so it's really up to you to determine whether this should go forth without bids. I can ask her to submit her background, her resume.
There's a couple other things too about the library. One is I concurred, I was on the library board here for a couple of years, that I think it's well understood that there's not a lot of money. I agree with you. We don't have a lot of money to do that. We have a lot of other things we need to do. And that I think it's pretty well understood by the library board that if this happens at all, it's on them. And that this grant writing is precursor to getting a larger, hopeful grant from the state to provide seed money to do that. Not that they're going to come back to us and ask for money, because I wouldn't vote for that. I don't know how many people would. We just simply don't have the money for it, and I think they understand that. And there was about half a dozen conceptual ideas that people talked about with that block, ranging everything from what you suggest, which is adding on, which is probably the most cost-effective at one level, to a complete redevelopment of the entire block, which would hopefully create a certain amount of tax base that could then be used to cover whatever the costs were. But I think it was also understood that unless that tax base did cover the costs, that it was probably a non-starter. At which point, then we're back to something that is a more maybe cost-effective way to do it. So we're not sure where we're at with that. I don't think the library board is yet. That's part of the reason why they're doing this. But I think it's pretty well understood that we don't have a pot of money here for them to dip into.
Right, if the feasibility is a go as opposed to a no-go, we will then proceed to apply for the $500,000 grant, which we will match, and our foundation and the library building fund will go certainly toward that. The $500,000, if we are awarded that from the state, will go to the library. If it's a library block development, it still goes to a library portion of that. If the library block development does not go forward, then certainly the $500,000, if we are awarded that, will go to extending or renovating the library to fit its needs at the time. So, but everything's up in the air right now. I mean, there's a lot of discussion, but nothing's concrete. The feasibility, I think, will let us know whether it's a go or a no-go. And of course, we know that we'd have to raise several $1 million if we were going to do that.
And that's what's bothering me. If it's millions of dollars to raise, I don't see where it's gonna come from.
I would be surprised if they're able to do this as much more than an expansion of the existing library, given the current climate. But maybe there's somebody out there who's got several $1 million they want to give to the city. Who knows? If any of you people listening at home have $7 million, just send it on in. So, any other discussion about this? Do we have a motion and a second on this at one point?
Yes.
Wait, so long ago, I can't remember. Any other discussion? That's right, we had Eileen's motion with the adjustment. Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Killian,
No,
Pilecki,
Yes.
Steiner,
No.
Becker,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Bonin,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. Item E under action tonight is garbage and recycling fee policy. Staff comments?
This was introduced briefly at our last meeting. With the budget approval, we also adopted a $60 annual garbage fee to be added to the tax bill. We, staff, are anticipating several questions, and so as a staff, we thought it'd be best to have a policy to try to help explain the garbage charge to residents. Basically, the policy lays out the reason for the policy, as well as the general rules and regulations as to who is being charged for garbage. And then we also included a section called appeals process. If someone feels they are unjustly charged for garbage, we certainly can go forward with some type of an appeals process. So the policy is intended to be something that we can hand out to people who have concerns about the garbage fee.
Questions?
I have a question on page 2. Item number 4. Would you explain that particular item?
Item number 4 states that the amount of garbage does not impact the cost of providing this service. Therefore, the fee set does not fluctuate and is not dependent on the amount of garbage put out for pickup. Staff is anticipating that one resident will say, well, I put out 1 bag and my neighbor puts out 3 bags, therefore they should be charged 3 times what I'm charged. And we're trying to recognize that as a concern that they may have and lay the ground rules for how this fee will be implemented.
Well, that goes along with number 3. So you can only put out at the most 2 35-gallon bags, containers of garbage. That's the limit.
Yes.
And
Well,
what
you're
Larry's
saying
saying
the
is, if
amount
I
of
put out
garbage-
1 and you put out 2,
But Ken?
The amount of garbage less than 2 35-gallon containers does not impact the cost, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Good. So it's not clear.
Barb?
that's what I was just gonna say. Doesn't matter if I put out 1 garbage can a week or 2 garbage cans a week, I'm paying $60 for the year. not 30 or something else for one garbage. That's fine.
Other comments or questions?
Where is this information? How are the citizens going to find out about that?
We're anticipating a location on the front page of our website. We also want it to be a handout for when people come in and raise questions to the city manager or the finance department when they're asking questions about their tax bill. And I guess we're open to distributing it in any other way. We just want to make sure we have direction from the council on how to explain this to residents. So we have a policy laying the ground rules and the appeals.
Will that go on this year's taxes then if we?
Yes.
But it'll be for next year's.
The tax bills that are printed in December of 2012 will include a garbage fee.
For 2013.
Depending on when you pay your tax bill, yes.
Well, yeah.
The question I would have is, why is the appeals process brought back to the city council at a city council meeting rather than, say, the Board of Appeals or some other body?
I don't know that I have a particular reason.
Just wondered if there was a reason for doing that.
We can
over
substitute
something
Board of
else.
We're the ones
Appeals.
that passed the fee.
So we should be able to enjoy
should have to deal
the
with it.
consequences of that, huh? Other questions?
I do have is the garbage fee, is the garbage contract separate from the recycling contract?
No. It's all on the same contract.
They're all on the same contract.
Yes.
So this is a garbage and recycling fee.
Yes.
Okay. So
I believe I use them interchangeably in this document. Would you like them all
I
to say
understand that.
garbage
I
and
think it
recycling?
should say, anytime it refers to the fee, it should be about garbage and a recycling fee, because it is
Okay.
for both. I don't want somebody to think, oh, next time are we gonna then pass a recycling fee?
I thought it said that somewhere.
It starts at the top, but then it just drops off and it just talks about garbage.
Yeah. Well, it does say term garbage fee, quote unquote, includes the cost of both garbage and recycling.
It says that in the first paragraph.
I'm happy to add the word recycling to the rest of the document. It's fine. I mean, that's pretty easy to do.
Do we want to have that document come back before we vote on it, or?
Good Lord, no.
Steve doesn't like this document.
Arlene Sis has asked to speak to this issue, so Arlene, if you would come forward,
This-
state your
this is
name and
a-
local address, please.
This is a tax. Talk about the tax.
It's a revenue enhancement.
Arlene Sis, 130 North Hickory. A couple things. When you were doing your budget, I did not respond because I was thinking about it, but next year, if you do this, I would like to have it change from being on my tax bill to being on the water bill. I know some of you don't agree, but I do own some properties, and I think my tenants need to take that responsibility to pay for the garbage and recycling that they generate, not I. Second thing, if this is you might want to think about maybe individuals should, like in larger cities, find their own person to do their recycling and their garbage. They pay for it directly to the person who provides that service. 3, if you're looking for another way to let the population here in Platteville know what's going on, why not include it in their water bill that goes out once a month? Rather than having us have to come in and pick it up and find it, or for those who do not have internet, and there are still people who do not, have them look for it on the internet. Those are my suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments?
I'm reading here in the purpose, it says, it is anticipated that the rate will increase to cover the complete costs in future budgets. So this is what the citizens have to look forward to that are single family and own a duplex. Look forward to increase in your taxes.
Would you like that statement removed?
I would take it out. I don't want to see it increased. I don't wanna see this increase.
Did we have a motion on this?
No, I don't think so.
Well, Steve, you don't want to see this back again, so surely you be ready to make a motion.
I'm not making any motions.
Anything else? Arlene, you shut us down.
Well, I gave you something to think about.
Nobody wishes to make a motion?
I make a motion, we adopt policy Roman numeral 3-6. Yes, that's the number, is that? Yeah, garbage and recycling fee. First promulgated on 12/11/12.
What?
You don't see this? It's up at the top. of
Well,
the
I'm
thing.
not looking at your screen here, so.
It's on the second.
It's on the second page at the very
Second
top.
page at the top.
Roman numeral 3-6.
Okay, there it is, way up there.
As
So
proposed.
you're proposing to, making a motion to adopt this.
Yeah.
I'll second it because I think we need to move this forward. I'll make a comment that we received in the past some information about other cities and whether or not cities include the garbage pickup and recycling on their taxes. Some do, some don't. Lancaster, for example, does not. So one of the comments we often hear about city taxes is that they seem to be high. I would personally disagree with that in this sense. I had Dwayne Borgen look up my taxes in my house for the last 6 years. And I think in 6 years, they went up $60. And by the way, my assessment increased by about $35,000 because we added a room onto our house, which I'm very glad we did. But the point being that if you look at your tax bill, you'll see it's been very consistent over those 6 years. And Lancaster does not include the garbage and recycling fee on their taxes. It is a separate bill. And so, yes, in a sense it's a fee, and in a sense it's a tax. But the reality is that for at least the last 6 years, my taxes have increased minimally with no loss of services in the city, and I think we should all be happy about that. And so please look at your tax bill. Look at what your tax bill was last year, the city portion. I'm not talking about the public school, the technical college, Grant County, or the state of Wisconsin, because you pay taxes to all those entities as well. But please, when you pay your taxes to the city offices, recognize that I think this council, for the last 6 years, as far as I went back, has done a good job of keeping taxes as low as we can keep them for the services that have been provided. You know, no one likes paying taxes, but I think that there should be a recognition that we really have attempted and successfully, I feel, kept our taxes down. So yes, this year there's a $60 fee for garbage pickup, which is not on tax bills in some other communities. So that's the reality of the services that you receive as a citizen in Platteville. And if you look at the cost of living for the last 6 years, again, if we held taxes steady, I think that's an accomplishment. I know it's still difficult when that tax bill comes, but that's what I would say, Ken.
Well, I think this is the first city I've ever lived in where I didn't get a bill in the mail every month from the garbage and recycle company.
And if you own a property that has more than 2 units, so if you own a triplex, as I do, as Arlene said, income property, I've been paying that fee every year that I've owned it. So it's been included in my taxes, but it's also been a fee that I've paid separately.
Well, you're gonna pay for it no matter what.
So you're gonna pay for it no matter what. And maybe this is more transparent to say, hey, this is the fee that you're paying for garbage and recycling.
Well, let's realize it's only half the fee.
And that is a very good point, and that's exactly why the wording, I think, was put in this garbage and recycling fee document. This $60 is approximately half of what it costs every year for a house or a duplex in the city to have their garbage and recycling picked up.
You all know what you can look forward to next year. Any other discussion on this? Roll call vote, please.
Killian,
No.
Delecky,
Yes.
Steiner,
Yes.
Becker,
No.
Doss,
Yes.
Nichols?
Yes.
Bonin?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item F is a purchase of a new ambulance, a request to do that. Brian?
We have budgeted $180,000 to purchase a new ambulance, which will replace the oldest ambulance, which is currently 7 years old. We've traditionally been on a 6-year rotation, so obviously it is past time. Currently, there is a sinking fund which takes money out of the operational budget of the ambulance service and sets it aside for the purchase of a new ambulance. Currently, there is $228,000 in that sinking fund. $180,000 was budgeted last year. Bids went out and they came back higher than that. We are proposing to use the $180,000 that was budgeted along with Act 102 money, which is state grant money, can be used for training or the purchase of ambulances, and also money that we have in our donation fund, supply fund, to cover the difference. Approximately $15,000 is what the lowest bid would be. Above that, so it'd be about $195,000.
I think I asked last time what it would cost us to replace the parts on the ambulance that are wearing out, which I would assume to be the drivetrain and the suspension. What would it cost us if we did that instead of buying a new ambulance?
To rebuild the engine, a transmission rebuild, drive shaft, and rear end, along with labor. Pioneer Ford, when I contacted them, the service manager estimated at least $25,000. That's not taking into any account any wiring in the chassis of the ambulance. There's also body work that needs to be done. We've got paint that's peeling, paint that's bubbling. And he was also concerned about the heating and air conditioning and some other concerns as well. He said that there may be a mounting cost.
If you replace the engine, that should replace the heating system, shouldn't it?
The heating system and the air conditioning system there's two different systems in the ambulance. There's one for the patient compartment and there's one for the vehicle itself.
I think we ought to be looking at doing something like that instead of spending $200,000 at a crack at these things. I think we could do something a little bit more cost effective here. Ken?
The drivetrain, engine and drivetrain, what's the guarantee on the whole setup?
He did
Is
not
it 100,000 miles?
He didn't say what, because they're rebuilt.
Okay.
He didn't say
So we don't know
the
what
warranty. I don't
what
know
sort of guarantee we get?
I don't know what the warranty would be on a rebuild.
How many miles on the ambulance that we have out in front here?
There is 71,115.
So if we had a 100,000 mile guarantee, that should cover the drivetrain on the new vehicle, new ambulance. Is that correct? So we don't know what it is.
Correct. I'm not for sure what the warranty would be on.
Actually, I just need to clarify, Ken, I'm not sure. Are you asking what the warranty is on a new vehicle?
A new vehicle.
A new vehicle.
Yes,
I think Brian thought you were asking on a,
new one.
on one that had been,
Yeah. Let me see if I can find it quickly.
You don't know what it is on the old one. I guess my question is getting at, are you talking about 70-some thousand miles? I mean, we're not up to 100,000 miles. And so why do we have to be concerned about being at 71,000 if the guarantee is up to 100?
I think probably the answer isn't whether any costs would be covered, but rather whether you have the kind of reliability that you want.
The transmission for the chassis that we're looking at is 60 months unlimited mileage. So 5 years unlimited mileage.
And the motor?
Diesel engine is 24 months unlimited mileage.
And how old is the ambulance that we're replacing?
7 years. And I checked with the company that is the lowest bid. If we did that work and held it for 5 years, they said the trade-in value wouldn't do anything for the trade-in value because there'd be more miles on it than what there is now.
How much are we getting for trade-in now?
15.5 with this company.
So the amount that we're looking at approving tonight includes the trade-in?
Yes.
Where are we as far as, right now we have 2 ambulances, correct?
Correct.
And a few years ago, I know we were talking about possibility that we might have to add a 3rd ambulance sometime in the future. Where are we as far as that process? What are we anticipating? Are we anticipating a 3rd ambulance in the foreseeable future, or a couple years, or what?
That would depend on a facility to house the ambulance.
Assuming we had the facility for the housing. I think that's what was holding us back, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I think you said about a year ago or something that we were recognizing that there was a need for a 3rd ambulance. And at that time, we talked about possibly, instead of trading one in and only getting 15,000, would it be worth keeping one, if we were gonna buy a second one, a new one like this, just keeping this one for a backup. And what stopped us from doing that was we didn't have a place to put it.
Correct.
And that's where we're still in the same situation.
Yep.
Brian, how old's the other ambulance?
The other ambulance is a 2008, so it's 4 years old now.
It's 4 years old, and how many miles?
About 30,000. I was looking at one of my EMTs that was on call today, so he was doing paperwork, so 29,000.
Motion to approve the purchase of the new ambulance as recommended by staff.
Second.
A motion and a second. How many of those miles are spent doing non-emergency trips to Madison or Dubuque?
On that ambulance, a large majority. That's where most of the miles come from on that ambulance because it's
We're making money off of doing that?
Yes.
Does that money go into paying off the ambulance and going into the sinking fund too?
Yes, all that money that is brought in is offsetting our operating budget.
So is the sinking fund money that's put in every year come out of that operating budget as well?
Yes.
Okay.
How's it work done when they use one out of Dubuque? Obviously, it would go to them, right?
Yep, that money goes to the money that's collected by that company is theirs.
Other questions? I'd like us to look at this idea of rebuilding a little more closely. I think there's maybe $100,000 at a crack every time we buy one of these ambulances that we could be saving if we looked at this a little differently. And yes, it's not gonna be cheap to replace an engine and drivetrain or maybe the other air conditioning system, but my gosh, it's costing us, what, 202 plus 15,000 trade-in, that's $217,000 to get a new ambulance. I gotta believe for 100,000 you could get essentially a brand new one just with everything rebuilt. So I think this is some money that we might be able to recover at some point. So, anything else? Roll call vote, please.
Killian,
Yes.
Delecky,
Yes.
Steiner,
Yes.
Becker,
Yes.
Goss,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Bonin.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Under information and discussion tonight, item A is the Master Parks Plan as presented to us by the Recreation, Forestry, and Parks Committee.
The plan went to the Community Safe Routes Committee as requested. They only had a few changes on Mountain View Park priorities as well as the Valley View. So they added two priorities to Mountain View and one to Valley View. And then upon discussion with the city manager, we decided to change the dates from 2012 to 2016 to 2013 to 17 due to the lateness of the year.
Any questions for Jordan?
What was the added recommendation?
At Mountain View, they added that they would like to see the fishing pond
What page is that on? Please.
15 of the plan.
14 and 15?
15.
15.
Yep, it's number 7 and 8, I believe.
Valley View.
And they'd also like to see a safe connection from the high school to Mountain View Park across County Road B. More or less a trail from County Road B into the park.
There is.
I think it's at Madison right now. Jordan, I think you're talking more about
If they
further
came,
north on Broadway.
the high school students use Mountain View for various winter activities or activities during the school year. And they go out the back of the school and go through where the buses are parked
Right,
rather
so
than.
not walk up to Madison. and
Correct.
across, right.
And then on Valley View, they'd like to see a sidewalk along the west side of Gridley put back. I was under the impression there was a sidewalk there years ago, and they'd like to see it put back.
Ridley doesn't border Valley View anymore.
Right.
No.
Hickory
Yeah,
does,
it does.
and Marquee Drive does, and Southwest Road does, but Gridley was cut off and turns into
Ridley ends
Street.
at the corner.
I believe they're referencing Hickory.
South Hickory.
Yeah, I've heard that comment from residents.
There wasn't,
No,
there
there
wasn't a
was never-
sidewalk on
Gridley
South-
comes around there.
There was a
No.
sidewalk on Gridley.
South Hickory.
Oh, you're right.
Come
Oh,
around by where
it's Gridley and then turns to South Hickory.
As soon as you turn north, you're on South Hickory.
South Hickory, yeah, okay.
There was never a sidewalk there. There used to be a sidewalk on Gridley until the new residence hall went in, and then the sidewalk was put down on the level of
The street.
Roundtree Commons.
hall rather than at street level. And I suspect that that must be what they're referencing, because when you come up the sidewalk off Marquee onto Gridley, now there's no sidewalk.
That's right. They're talking about behind the
So they're
building.
actually talking about Gridley, but it's not bordering Valley View.
Right.
Maybe that one shouldn't be in the park plan then.
Pardon?
Maybe that's not appropriate for the parks plan if it's not bordering the park.
That's just more a safe routes recommendation generally, not a parks recommendation.
That one's really not, yeah, it doesn't border a park.
Okay.
Comes off.
Any other questions for Jordan? Okay. Thank you. Item B under information is resolution and ordinance adopting assigned parking for downtown spaces. You have a staff comment on that?
Certainly. This was discussed at previous meetings, and we've had recommendations come in from the RDA regarding parking in the downtown. I believe at our last council meeting, we had a few council meetings ago, we had seen the original draft of the resolution and possibly the ordinance. Staff took the direction from the council and moved forward and created regulations and signs so that when we are implementing this, you know exactly what we were looking at and how we were going to implement what is being proposed. The last 2 pages of the packet are also, if you could, picture them as front and back for a brochure. The communication specialist put together a brochure that we could use to communicate to the public how assigned parking would work under the resolution you're considering.
I believe, are you taking comments at this
Sure.
point? Last week, after the packet came out, I sent a note to all members of the Common Council on behalf of the RDA. The RDA met on, I can't remember what, the 26th of November, I guess it was, and discussed the input that had been received, and there were several members of the downtown, there were several downtown business people there and some downtown residents. And I sent the recommendations from the RDA based on the discussion that night, which was to initiate permit parking, or as you call it, assigned parking, in the downtown district on a trial basis, starting with one lot, and if that lot is sold, then perhaps moving to others. That the permit cost not exceed $30 a month, and that, like I said, after one lot is sold, then working into additional lots. Again, the RDA is asking about the city lot at the swimming pool and making it available at no charge for long-term parking of operable vehicles, cars and trucks, with special restrictions to exclude trailers, RVs, and general vehicle storage. And then finally, there was some discussion about the city approaching the university about offering subleases or permits for the spaces that the university has leased in McGregor Plaza that can only be now permitted to university personnel, to see if the city could perhaps, the university would perhaps consider selling those permits or subleases to downtown residents that aren't university students or employees. So those were the recommendations of the RDA to you.
Well, I think we still have the same issue we've always had, which is using public facilities that are paid for by the taxpayer for private use. And I think we need to move this toward, if people want to use it for permanent parking, that they pay. And I don't have a problem necessarily with the pool thing, although you'd have to specify an end time for that. But it makes me wonder whether at least some nominal fee or permit might make sense. I'm talking $10 or something, so at least that there's some regulation of it.
If you do move forward with the pool issue, I would like to confer with staff. I believe there are events that occur there in the off-season that we may need to work around.
I think with a lot of this, I think, Barb, that's not a bad idea to ask about that parking the university's got, because I've only ever seen about 2 cars there.
Well,
clearly, there's
and
some
actually,
excess capacity.
I've had some information that says the university won't be renewing that lease for next year. At least that's the talk that I've heard, that they won't be renewing that lease in McGregor Plaza for next year. I don't know if there's any member of the RDA that's asked to speak or not.
Well, John Lukey has, but I think that certainly if we can find other parking downtown, that doesn't hurt anything, but we still are back to the same thing, which is public use for private.
And while I understand that, one of the things that business owners brought up, and I understand this, if we assign parking, and I'm a downtown resident, and I now purchase an assigned parking spot, so I have parking spot 1. Right now, if I am in that parking spot, and I leave and go to my job, wherever that is, somebody that's an employee downtown can park in that space during the time I'm not there. With totally assigned parking in 90 spots, if those folks leave, then if new folks come in, they can't use those spots. So right now we're getting double use out of some spots. Some spots are being used as overnight for residents, and then when the resident leaves and goes to work, they're being used by downtown employees or perhaps downtown shoppers when they're empty during the day. And so you have this flow of coming and going, folks coming in, sleeping, leaving in the morning, going to work, other folks coming to work, and then leaving. And we don't, that's why I believe the RDA suggested a trial basis. Instead of allocating all of these spots for assigned parking, begin by allocating some, and then see how that affects, what effect that has on the remainder of the parking.
Who do you see using the swimming pool parking lot? Because it's so far from everything.
Well, I don't know. There have been some people who have expressed interest in being able to do that.
Oh, really?
They may come and park their car on a Monday and not want it until a Friday or what, and, you know, so there are people who have.
I think you'd have students that do
expressed
similar things to what they do on campus, which is they don't need a car except to get home.
Right.
And so they're within walking distance of Piggly Wiggly and the university and everything else they need, so having close parking isn't necessarily a big deal for them. But you're still left with the same question with the pool, which is, again, we're using public facilities for private gain, and I have to provide parking for my rental properties. I don't know why downtown landlords shouldn't have to do the same thing. If somebody could explain that, I'd love to do it. I'd love to hear that, so. Other comments? 3 people have indicated they'd like to speak, Jack Lidke and Heidi Dias-Macbeth, and John Zilke. If you can come forward in that order and state your name and local address and let us know what you think.
Mike, I want to say something. Okay. Wait till they're done.
I'm Jack Ludke, and our Executive Director for the Downtown Main Street Program, and 20 South Monson. That's the old address. 20 South 4th Street. I've been asked by the Executive Board to express our support for the recommendations from the RDA. Having been on the RDA for several months when this discussion first began, and then following through with the various meetings that they held, I would like to first of all commend the RDA for their efforts and perseverance in trying to come up with some solutions to these problems for particularly overnight parking in the downtown area. It is not the belief of the Executive Board for the Main Street Program that this is an end-all solution. That's why they're recommending that you consider the 5 points here that the RDA has highlighted, and using this as a test program. It was first raised as a test program to the Parking Committee over a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, and was raised by Alderman Nichols, Alderwoman. I didn't realize they had changed that. But Alderperson, how's that? Over almost 2 years ago, that a test be done, and it was not followed through with. I think this is an appropriate time to test that. Not all of the businesses downtown would support a limited test like this. Some of them would like it closer. Some of them would like some test spots on the south side of Main Street. But you've got to start somewhere, and I think that it's a good beginning point to start with that lot. The one thing I will point out to you, if you have not noticed it, the 6 parking places that are currently in that lot are occupied by city vehicles, and we would not like those city vehicles moved any closer into the parking area of the downtown. They were moved from basically back here behind the building over there. Hopefully you can find another place to park them so that you're not taking up these parking spaces back here. But that is really our support for this program. There will be other opportunities, I think, coming along to expand this, but it is our feeling that it needs to be expanded by demand, and let demand indicate that there are more people that want to purchase these permits to park in these areas. Any questions?
Do you have any idea, Jack, in working on those committees, what the actual need is? How many people do you think would be interested in having, paying for a reserved spot?
Well, the only ones that have been voiced, probably somewhere between 5 to 10 people have voiced that they would take spots right now, but we weren't at that position to really, those were the limited number of people that came to the RDA meetings. There were no students involved at that time, so I don't know, beyond that, to be honest with you, how many would be. It'd be pure speculation. That's why I think a test is good. Start it, let it roll out a little bit, and move from that point. To turn all of them into permit parking, and to have those expectations on the students that they're going to have to come up, as the ordinance says, with what is the total fee at the beginning, $360, I think is going to be a shock to some of the, you're not going to get people to to jump in and do that, other than some of the business people that have indicated, you know, they want those permit spaces downtown.
So do you think it would be reasonable to say start with 2 of the parking lots as, say, a test? One south of Main, one north of Main?
Well, right now, my direction from my board is to support the initiative of the RDA. I mean, this is a subject which has, you know, taken a lot of energy and time from the council level to the RDA, to the Downtown Parking Association, to the Main Street program and getting involved. And I think that they've come up with a direction which will give everybody something to hang their hat on here and move forward with. And I think the council should seriously consider these recommendations and that they've made to the council and move in that direction.
Thank you. Heidi Dias-Smith, followed by John Zilke.
Hi, Heidi Dias-Macbeth, 1723 Rex Road, representing the owners of the Driftless Market at 95 West Main Street. I just had a brief statement just to say, you know, we believe that, and thank you to the RDA for taking as much time as they have on this issue, but we believe that the RDA has taken the time to survey community members. They've been in close communication with the university, and they've done a good job of listening to the concerns of downtown business owners and tenants. We feel that the council should follow the recommendations of the RDA related to parking permits in the downtown area. I think we found, even just with the, you know, looking to see what people kind of tried to anticipate for parking issues with the new dorm, it's very difficult to anticipate what things will be in the future, and so taking slow steps towards things. And I think the trial idea is a great idea. So anyway, thank you. Any questions?
Good evening. John Zalke, 235 East Dewey here in Platteville. I'm also a council appointed member of the RDA, so I came here tonight for 3 reasons. One is to talk about the survey they went out. You guys should all have a copy in your packet of those results. I can answer any questions to that. Also, to talk about the letter that Barb has mentioned, and then just any questions you have in general of kind of the disconnect between what we brought to the council and what's going forward. So originally it started out back in the summer, you guys asked that the RDA be tasked with looking at parking in downtown. And so what we did is we took the data that we had, because we didn't want to make decisions based on, you know, what we thought individually. So we basically had 2 data points at that time. The first was a spreadsheet that Joe brought in that determined how much parking was needed downtown based on square footage of the buildings. And the second piece we had was a study done by UWP students in the spring that was also provided. So with those 2 data points, we went ahead and we had several meetings, lots of input from the community. And then we decided that we were going to do a phased effort. And this came out with Barb going down to Dubuque and talking to them, some members of the DPA going down to Galena and talking with them, and then lots of articles in addition to the data that we had. Because we knew that this, there was no panacea or ultimate silver bullet for this issue, that this is going to have to be a phased approach. And so what we did is we sent out the first memo that came to you guys, and basically the parts of that is that we knew that consistent enforcement was going to have to be an issue. That was one thing that came up early, is that enforcement over summer was different than it was during the school year, and also, you know, on the weekends versus during the week and at nights and things like that. So that was the first part of it. The second part is that both, is that the UWP study indicated, and also just general comments from the community, is that there needed to be a focus on overnight parking in downtown for the residents of downtown and also the employees, because both of those showed a lack in Joe's basically square footage for people who live downtown, and also the UWP study. And then at that time, we had also considered distributing a survey, but we did not distribute the survey at that time because of the 2 data points that we had. 1, 2, we knew this was going to be a multi-phase approach, so we wanted to implement this first part, see how that was going, because we wanted to do it before the school year started, so that it was in place and could be moving forward then, and then put out this survey at a later time, once we knew how things were working. Then the DPA was created, and one of the first things that they asked for was to kind of put everything on hold and step back and take another look at. And so they asked that the survey be sent out again. And so the RDA reconsidered it. The survey, we took the considerations of them. Those came in. The RDA looked at it again. They made changes. It went to the Common Council for changes. And then it also went to a final meeting of the DPA the night before they were due to go on the water bill in October. And so I think everybody's seen the survey results. We've sent those out. It was basically out for the entire month of October. A manual copy went out in the water bills. It was also posted to the Twitter and Facebook accounts of the city, and it was also distributed in a UWP email. So we had 917 total responses. 607 of those were returned with the water bills, and 310 of those were online. Joe and I entered those manually, the returned ones. So thanks to Joe for his help with that. Another thing I think you guys can appreciate is that this survey is only $24 a month for 3 months, so it cost us $72 was the total cost of this. And I think what can be gleaned from it is good information. And then also there's open responses, the last 2 questions on the survey, which you guys have also been provided with. And I think that that provides a ton of information, not only for the downtown businesses, but for the council in general. And I know there's been some consideration or talk about, the survey is not scientific, that, I don't really care what the results say because it's not scientific. And to those people, I don't think that's a fair assessment. I mean, obviously, we're trying to work with what we have. Like I said, we spent $72 on this, and I think the results that come back are important, not only because they don't measure because it's not scientific, but they show a perception in the community. The other thing is that it also matches some of the results that came back on the UWP study and also Joe's assessment. We still see a need for overnight parking downtown for the residents. That's what the survey brought back that we did as well. There also the need to simplify signage in downtown. That came back on the survey, which is also an important part of we discussed as we go through articles on different communities. The more signage you have in downtown, if people have difficulty finding parking, if they come into downtown and they're confused and don't know where they're going, if everywhere they look at signs, it's a turnoff. And so that's another thing that we took into consideration, another point that came back from the survey. The importance of keeping Main Street parking open. And the most important thing that I think you guys need to consider is that in the UWP study, and also this study and anything else we ask for, is that people want more parking, but they are completely unwilling to pay for it. And that's held true in both studies, so scientific or not. And I don't see, anything that's changed that, especially in our recommendation letter here. We want to know, where the UWP was with their leases, because you can look over there, like anybody said, and see that no one's willing to pay for it. And that is considerably less, almost half of what the city's looking to charge. And so again, it comes down to perceptions, and I hope all you take the chance to read through the survey and also look at the open responses, because I think there's a lot of good stuff to be gleaned there. The pool parking, again, someone asked about the pool parking, who would be interested in that. That's brought up because, like Mike pointed out, is that we have people who live downtown who don't want to pay for parking, but they only move their car a couple times a month. So they just want a place where they can keep it, because there aren't any lots downtown or a place where they can basically keep it, more than 24 hours. They have to keep moving their car over and over, and they just want a spot where they can put it. The other issue is, obviously, that Mike said, how come people downtown landlords don't have to find parking? A big part of it is inventory. There is no inventory in parking downtown. And just to reiterate the point that was brought up earlier, if you go forward with all of the spots that are allocated, those spots will sit empty all day long if they bought up by people who are there overnight. And they're going to sit absent all day long because, they can't park there. It's assigned parking now. And that is going to be a huge impact. And if you look at the survey, the results that are there, I don't know if anybody has questions specifically, but the ones that matter are questions 7 and 8, I think, are the 2 big ones. And that's basically is, do you have trouble finding parking downtown? And, the top 2 answers, strongly agree, somewhat agree, is 51.6%. So out of 917 responses. If you look at the neutral, if you take the agree, then it goes up to 66. And so if you take away that inventory that you're talking about, with all of the spots, you're going to have a big issue. That'll go up. That number's going to go up significantly, whether scientific or not. And so the reason we've put in this recommendation here is for the one lot is because we don't think the demand is there. Out of all the surveys that went out, 917, only 40 people indicated they'd be willing to buy a $30 permit. So it's in there.
30 people, you say, John?
40, 40.
40.
John, if we made every overnight parking lot downtown a pay lot spot, how many people then would be willing to pay for it? Because that would be what they'd have to do. When you ask people voluntarily if they're willing to take a shot to the heart like that, not many people are gonna do it. But, you know, I don't like to pay my taxes either. If you gave me a choice, I wouldn't pay them.
I think what you'll see is you'll see downtown become a ghost town in terms of residents. They'll just move out. I mean, I can't speak to that, but I mean, you see it across the street at Dick's. We've listened to it all summer long. I mean, we've seen the impact of changing of parking regulations and people coming in and saying, why did you take away the only 24 spots in downtown I have to park? And we say, well, are you willing to pay? And they're like, well, no, I don't want to pay because I haven't paid and I already pay taxes. And, you know, that's not how it works downtown. It's different. It's an exception. And I'm not one to argue with that. I mean, that is how it is. And so that's where that's at. And the other piece that I just want to say is, in general, is that one bullet item that was missed on this letter that I think needs to be there is that the monies raised from this will be small, but also that they should go into like a parking authority fund. And that money needs to be used for downtown parking, whether it be a study or whether it be to the, you know, the process of permitting and the costs associated with that, or saving, you know, there's just whatever. But it can't just go into the general fund and be lost.
But help me here with what I would say to a taxpayer who would ask me why that money doesn't belong to the taxpayers and should go into the general fund, since they're the ones that supply the parking in the first place. What should I say to them that would convince them that that's not their money, and that they shouldn't have that money be used to provide city services that everybody benefits from, not just the people who park there?
We all benefit from thriving downtown.
We do, from the parking.
If you can't find a place to park in our downtown, who comes to our downtown? You know,
But we don't have any problem parking downtown. I drive by there all the time, and there's all sorts of spots to park. We've already established that there's not a parking problem downtown for customers.
For retail.
Yeah. And let me, I mean, here's the funny thing is the university instituted some pretty interesting parking regulations this year on campus, and we also instituted some parking regulations around Roundtree Commons. How many people didn't come to campus because of that? What happened was, and if you drive through campus, you find out there's a lot fewer cars there than there were last year. I drive in the same place every day for 20 years, and all of a sudden there's just tons of empty spaces. Why? Because all of a sudden they don't need them. Now, if you're going to argue that suddenly downtown is going to become a ghost town because some people have to pay for parking, really?
I'm not going to argue that
Really?
it's become a ghost town, but at the extent that you're currently proposing it, it's going to be an issue. Because you can say we don't have a problem with parking, and I have to say that I agree. As a customer, I generally don't have to find parking ever. I don't live downtown, so I can't speak to that. I can only speak to people who come, and I can also speak to our survey and the UWP survey. People who live downtown cannot find parking. And so that's what the study shows.
But here's the problem with studies like this, is I drive down there all the time. John Miller did a study last year, and we all have talked about we can't find parking downtown, and yet we drive downtown and there's parking there all over the place. I've been on the Badger Brothers a dozen times in the last 3 weeks. I don't have any problem parking anywhere near there, ever. And so when people say there's no parking, you have a survey that reflects a perception that doesn't reflect the reality, and now you want us to build public policy on the basis of perception that doesn't actually match reality.
Okay.
And I just have a hard time with that, John.
But our policy is so small. We're asking for one lot out in the peripheral for people who are willing to pay.
Just a minute here. You're switching gears on me here. I'm asking about a survey that's saying that people's perception is you can't find that parking, but that's not true. And so you're asking us to build public policy on the basis of perception, not reality. What kind of public policy is that?
But our recommendation here isn't to address, our recommendation, the first part of it, like I said, is to come in to cover what enforcement is the primary issue, consistent enforcement. The second one is to find parking for people overnight. Both studies have indicated that that's an issue. And I haven't heard, I guess, too many opinions otherwise. I'm not talking about just the day-to-day downtown, people coming down to shop. I'm talking about people who live downtown, are there overnight, and are gone during the day. That is indicated that that's an issue finding parking. And those, when those spots got shut down on Roundtree, we heard a lot, and I'm sure that you guys heard a lot too, of how much that impacted parking. And those are for overnight residents, not for people who are going over to Badger Brothers or whatever. Because the people who shop downtown are only willing to walk 2 or 3 blocks. In general, I mean, that's, you know, what it comes back as, and that's what both studies show again.
But there's complete and utter parking spots within 2 or 3 blocks of everywhere downtown. There's never not, John.
Okay, I'm not arguing that. I'm arguing overnight parking, and that's why we're asking
Okay.
for one lot out in the peripheral where we keep the signage away, leave the other parking as it is, and the people, because there are people in town who want to pay because they want a guaranteed spot. We've had those come in, and that's why we're saying that small effort out there. We see how that goes. That's the first phase. If that goes well and we find out there's a demand for more, then we can increase it. But going through the whole downtown with all of them.
Okay, I understand your point of view here. I'm trying to represent the taxpayers who want to know why they have to give it away for free. Why doesn't a landlord simply add $30 to the price of their rental and say, I'll get a spot for you? I mean, that's part of the answer to this. The answer is nobody wants any pain. Nobody wants to solve the problem if it's going to involve any pain whatsoever. And the fact is you can't have change unless you have somebody who's going to have to make an adjustment.
But I don't know how, I mean, I feel that this change is fairly small. We're asking for one lot for
I
people
know,
who are
that's
willing to
exactly
pay.
the point. It's fairly small. We should
Right.
ask for more.
I don't think so, and I
We're
think
gonna
the issue
disagree
is
on that, you and
inventory.
I.
Okay, let's keep moving on.
So, anyway, anything else, John?
I mean, do you guys have any questions related to the survey itself? Has anybody taken a look at it? Or
Read the answers.
do you have any concerns, I mean, with the RDA in general?
Well, a lot of their responses were, if they had a problem with parking, they just put parking. They didn't specify, okay, are you a student? Are you here 9 months out of the year? Are you here all year? Are you working downtown? Are you living downtown? So I thought it was hard to really gain any conclusion. That's why I asked earlier, okay, what is the need? How many spaces do you think we would need? Or how many people are there who are willing to rent a space, pay $30 a month for an assured parking space so they don't get, any more parking tickets? And the other thing was on the survey, they had a lot of wrong notions. They think that we paid for the roundabout, and therefore, why did we waste that money in the roundabout when that could be used towards building a new ramp? Well,
All state.
yeah, it was all state.
They got
So there's
nothing
a
to
lot
do
of, they had a lot of false information.
I understand that, but any survey would have that. I mean, what could you put in a survey to make it scientific that would take those misconceptions away before they started
I just wanted more
it?
detail on their parking, on their parking needs.
So we can break it down, like I said, because of the questions, the way the survey was set up. One of the things they asked you, are you a UWP student? And the number there for that total, basically it turned out the age of 18 to 24, 183 of those were college students. And so, and we can filter it down further based on if they work and live downtown. We had questions specific to that. And if they worked or lived downtown, they were 85% strongly disagree to slightly, strongly agree to slightly agree that there is a difficulty finding parking downtown for overnight. Not for shopping, but for overnight parking as I live downtown.
That I understand,
So
sure.
if they had a permit, it wouldn't be difficult at all.
But I'd like to know is where's these city buildings at that's supposed to have all this room inside for parking?
I don't know. I can't speak to any of that. So, I mean, there's.
See, that survey, that's why I'm having a hard time with it because of all the remarks like that was in there.
But you can't let the remarks of a few dilute the whole survey. I mean, we wanted the open responses so that people had and also that allows us to bring them out into the open public and tell them that they're wrong. I mean, that's the only way that they get out. So I think there's value in that. So.
Yeah, okay. Jack, did you have something else you wanted to add here? You look like you're just dying.
Well, first of all, I would ask the council to give some credence to the efforts that were made by the RDA. I mean, you asked the RDA to investigate this, and the survey is only one small part of that whole process and, you know, give it the weight that it deserves. I would agree with President Dalecki that it wasn't scientific and it could have been probably a better survey, but that can be said about every survey. And to John's comments about disregarding, you know, you throw the curve out, disregard the oddball comments that are made from, that are so obvious that, you know, you're even remembering them. That needs to be put aside and get to the base root of what we're trying to do here. And the only issue right now that's on the board, no one's disagreeing right now because no changes have been recommended in the 2-hour parking for customers. You got to separate that piece from the overnight parking. And I again would agree that maybe the solution to this long-term overnight parking for residents downtown needs to be a discussion held with and the ball put on the court of the property owners downtown, just like it is throughout the city. But that isn't the issue before you tonight. The issue before you is, do we do a test to start to see if the permit parking is a valid issue and can be implemented and can be driven forward by the demand for those permit parking spaces. And so I would again reiterate support for that recommendations from the committee that you asked for. Thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah, I have a couple comments.
Me too.
The survey may have some flaws, but it's clear looking at the survey is that there's not much demand for people that are willing to pay $30 a month for rent downtown. We've got, in a proposal, we've got 92 slots that were proposed in this document where we're saying let's have assigned parking. The RDA is recommending one lot, which I guess is 7 spaces, right?
Either or 9, I don't really remember.
It says fourth in furnace, which is that if I look at this document, that's
7.
That's 7 spots. So we got 92, we got 7. I think we ought to be closer to 7 than 92. Has anybody looked at, I know there's at least one place near the downtown that a private citizen is renting out spaces and offering those for rent. Now, has anybody looked to see if that's 100% full or 50% full, or is anybody buying those?
I've looked.
Well, what's the answer?
There's spaces available.
Well, then that tells you right there
And-
that
Right, and the other thing I would say.
I mean, I think we should be, let me thank you for that information. That was my guess anyway. I didn't follow up on it, but I was thinking there were spaces available.
And Steve, if I could just add to that, the fact that the person I think you're talking about said that there's a demand in the winter and not the rest of the year.
Good.
And so
Because people don't want to, they don't mind walking when the weather's nice.
Right.
I'd go along with that. That's what I'd be doing too. Anyway, I guess what I'm saying, I don't see this demand right here for all these 92 spaces, and so I mean, I think we ought to take another look at this and before we make these dramatic changes right now. I'd look and see what private enterprise is doing, see if there's really a need here. We also have talked somewhat around about what are we going to do with places to rent. If individual property owners have a place that they'd like to rent out as a parking lot, right now, if I understand it, we really don't have any rules in that, do we, Joe? I mean, what are our rules, or else we're not enforcing it, or where are we in all that?
It's the
We're talking about that in Plan Commission.
Yeah,
they're looking at making some changes to the zoning ordinance regarding parking. So that will be coming forward to the council.
So I'm
probably
thinking
January.
there's some possible changes in here, and I'm thinking before we start passing something like this resolution, we ought to be looking at the changes that we might be making through the planning commission and that before we just jump in on that. So my recommendation would be not to move forward to this next meeting.
Dick?
I have two.
Just a second, Dick is next.
Well, what I wanted to mention is, I guess it's gonna be like everybody else feels too, that we just start out with a small lot and see how it goes. And which I would agree with everybody else that's on this back up here. Right now, I realize there's city property parked on it, but that's also public property. And I don't know if there's places for them vehicles to go, because I see some of them are they old squad cars, or?
They're likely to be sold shortly,
Oh, okay.
some of them.
But there's other places that can go, some of that stuff can't, like down at the city garage or something?
Yes, yes, that's correct.
Okay. That's it.
Barb?
Okay, I'd like to make two comments. One, and I have been paying attention to parking in the downtown district, and I do want to say that I have seen the parking spaces in the Oak Street lot that borders Main Street. The parking spaces up underneath the mural are 24-hour spaces. And I do see those full at night. I do see them empty during the day. And I do see people who are customers of the businesses in that area using those. So I mean, I heard this from downtown businesses that taking these 24-hour spots and permit parking them would cause issues with customer parking, and I took it upon myself to kind of look at that and see, and I agree, that is happening. So that's one thing I would say. And that's probably the last thing I'll say about parking, other than the fact that the other memo I sent from the RDA to the city manager and to the director of public works deals with Chestnut Street from Pine to Mineral Street. Because as we talked about parking, there were some requests to add parking on that street, additional parking spots. The RDA really feels that the DOT should do a study of the area between Pine Street and Mineral Street. There are traffic issues there. There are traffic flow issues there. There are safety concerns there. And we believe that adding, subtracting, or doing anything about parking without the DOT coming in and studying the flow, particularly as there's a discussion about redeveloping what's called the library blocks that's bounded by Chestnut, Elm, Pine, and Main, that will have implications for parking and traffic and everything in that area. So that was another letter I sent that had tangentially to do with parking, but really not, the primary motive for that was not parking.
All right. Anything else? I think that the third item under information is zoning amendment. I think that's all subsumed under this. Unless you want to have another discussion about that.
No, we didn't.
All right.
No.
Anything else? All right. Well, this ends the on-camera part of the meeting tonight. We'll take a 5-minute break, come back and do a work session about the EMS facility. And have a good holiday. We won't be back until January.